I bought my selfish dad a luxury SUV for his retirement, but at family dinner he said, "Let's drink to my stupid son who thinks that by buying me a car I will respect him." It's funny. All relatives were silent and waiting for some kind of reaction from me, but I quietly left and took the car. This morning, my phone exploded with 2 missed calls from Dad. And later my dad has always had this charm that draws people in. He knows how to talk, how to make people laugh, how to make people feel important for a minute. But that charm always had a switch, and it flipped quickly if you got too close. Growing up, I learned to live with the fact that I wasn't one of the people he used it on. He had a way of undercutting everything I did. I could get a promotion, buy a house, fix his old lawnmower without being asked. None of it ever really mattered. Megan, on the other hand, was praised for texting him back. She's younger, and to be fair, she never played along, never tried to win his approval, but somehow that made it easier for him to give it to her. I always thought I just hadn't earned it yet. So when Dad announced he was finally retiring after 35 years in real estate, I figured I had my chance. I'd been doing well. My business was finally taking off after years of struggling. And I wanted to do something big. Not to buy love or respect, but maybe to say, "Look, I did it. Maybe you can see me now." He'd always talked about this particular SUV, one of those luxury models with a name that sounds like a spaceship. He said it was the only car worth having, but he would never buy it. Because men earn what they drive. I ordered it 3 months before the retirement party. Had it delivered to the restaurant with a big red ribbon and everything. I told the valet to wait until dessert. Everyone was there. Our whole family. Some of Dad's old co-workers, Megan and her fiancé. Even Mom, who somehow is still playing peacekeeper after all these years. The dinner actually went well. People joked around. Toasts were made. I got up last, said a few words about his work ethic, the example he set, and how I hoped the car would help him enjoy his retirement. Then he stood up, raised his glass, looked right at me and said, "Let's drink to my stupid son who thinks that by buying me a car, I'm finally going to respect him. That's funny." He sat down like it was nothing. Everyone froze. Megan didn't even look up. My mother blinked and reached for her wine. One of his old co-workers gave me this awkward half smile, like he wasn't sure if it was a joke or not. And just like that, I was done. I didn't argue. I didn't try to explain. I just got up and walked out, called the tow truck from the parking lot, told them to pick up the SUV and bring it back to me. The valet looked confused. I gave him an extra 100 and told him not to ask any questions. When I got home, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger, not shame, just clarity. The SUV was in my driveway before midnight. It looked better there anyway. The next morning, I woke up to 20 missed calls from my father. He started texting. Short messages at first, then longer. I ignored them, made coffee, stared at the SUV like it was a monument to something I should have done years ago. And then, just before noon, Megan showed up at my door. She didn't even knock. She just walked in, closed the door behind her and said, "You won't believe what he's doing." Megan had never shown up at my house unannounced before. She stood there holding her phone, her face pale as if she had just come from a funeral. She handed it to me without saying a word. It was a group chat with our dad, Mom, her, and some of our uncles. He'd sent a picture of the SUV in my driveway. Yes, he must have followed the tow truck home. A message underneath. "Brian just proved that he doesn't respect family. That car was a gift. He's lucky I don't call the cops." Another message came in while I was holding the phone. "We need to talk, or things will get ugly." I looked at Megan. "He followed the truck?" She nodded. "He waited outside the restaurant. Then he followed it to your house. He's been driving by your house since last night. Brian, he says you stole it." I laughed at first. It was too crazy not to. But she didn't smile. "He's serious. He called Uncle Jared this morning and said you're unstable, that you've always resented him, that you tried to humiliate him in front of the family." I sat down slowly. My dad, the man who used to forget my birthday, was now building a campaign to paint me as a lunatic because I took back the car he taunted me about. I scrolled up in the chat and saw him twisting the story. According to him, I stormed out in tears, yelled about being disrespected, then took the gift and threatened to sue. Then Megan said something I wasn't expecting. You should be careful. He's not just angry. He's planning something. I looked up. Like what? He's been calling people. He talked to your landlord. Your office? He even called Mom's friend at the city permit office. For what? Megan hesitated. He told her he thinks you're committing tax fraud. That you're using your business for shady deals. I stared at her. He's actually trying to ruin me? She nodded. I was still processing that when my phone buzzed. A voicemail from my office manager. She sounded nervous. Hey, Brian. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Someone claiming to be from the IRS called and asked about your business records. They knew things they weren't supposed to know. I sat back, stunned. This wasn't about the SUV. This was about control. I hadn't just embarrassed him at dinner. I'd taken away his last performance. For once, he wasn't the star. And now he was doing what he always did, only louder, meaner, and with more people watching. But here's what he didn't realize. I had been prepared for this. Maybe not this exact explosion, but something like it. I'd spent years hoping he'd change while quietly documenting it all. Screenshots, emails, voicemails, even an old message from him basically bragging about writing off fake expenses when he was still working. I looked at Megan. He wants to play dirty, I said. She raised an eyebrow. You got something? Oh yeah, I said. And if he wants a war, he's about to find out how much I've been holding back. And I wasn't just talking about him. There was someone else who'd been helping him behind the scenes. I just didn't know who yet. But that was about to change. I didn't go to work that day. I couldn't concentrate. I sat in my kitchen with my laptop open, staring at a folder I never thought I'd actually use. I'd been keeping records for years, just in case. Bank transfers, questionable invoices, copies of contracts my dad used in his real estate business that I knew were fake. I never intended to expose him with them. At the time, it felt like insurance, something to remind me that I wasn't crazy, that what he was doing wasn't normal. But now, it wasn't just about protecting myself. He was after my life, my work, my name. And that kind of attack doesn't end with an apology. It ends when the person attacking you no longer has the power to do so. I began to make a plan. Step 1 was to leak just enough to make him sweat. Not to the police. Not yet. I wanted the walls to close in slowly. I called Sasha, an old friend from college who now runs a forensic accounting firm. She's cleaned up enough messes to know a train wreck before it hits the station. I emailed her my entire binder. 15 minutes later, she called me. Brian, this isn't just messy. This is prison chaos. I asked her to prepare a summary file, enough to scare the hell out of him. I wanted something I could send anonymously to every one of his former business partners, the state licensing board, and some of the people at the country club he always bragged about. She agreed. I promised her a bonus if he tried to fight back. Late in the afternoon, Megan came by again. She looked worse than the day before, phone in hand, scrolling quickly. You'll want to sit down, she said. She showed me a group chat. Not the same one from before. A new one. This one was just Mom, Megan, and our dad. Mom had sent him my old utility records, the account numbers, the business post office box I set up when I moved. She didn't guess she had access. All my life, I thought she was just quiet, passive. The kind that kept the peace no matter how bad things got. But this wasn't passive. This was intentional. I sat there reading texts between my own parents, making jokes about how Brian still thinks the car is important. And he always wanted to be important. It was like watching people you love talk about you, like you're some delusional stranger. I didn't say anything. I got up, went to my home office, opened another folder. This one was called Backburner. It contained something I never thought I'd use. The deed to a piece of property my father didn't know I owned. 7 years ago, I bought a small piece of land just outside the town where he grew up. It used to belong to my grandfather, but my dad sold it when he needed cash. I bought it back from a developer who never built anything on it. My dad always regretted selling that land. He used to talk about it like it was his biggest mistake. He wanted to build a cabin there, retire on it, pass it down. He didn't know I had it. And now I had another idea. I called the county, asked if I could get some survey flags and stakes. Told them I wanted to develop the land, build a workshop, maybe a gate. I asked if I would need some kind of public notice if the access road ran close to the neighbor's property. The woman on the phone laughed and said, "Well, not unless your neighbors are going to cause trouble." Perfect. Megan was still in the kitchen when I returned. "I'm not going to war with him," I said. "I'm going to wipe him out piece by piece." She looked at me for a long time and said, "What if he tries to fight back?" I smiled. "That's what I'm counting on." 3 days later, my father showed up at my house. He didn't knock. He parked his car right behind the SUV he still called his, got out in full golf gear, and walked right up to the door like he owned the place. I only opened it because I wanted to see how far he'd take this. The first thing he said was, "You think you're smart, don't you?" He didn't ask to come in. He just stood there grinning like the king of some kingdom I no longer lived in. "I've heard from a few people. Seems you've been busy making calls, stirring up old garbage. You don't want to do that, Brian. You don't want to go against your own blood." I didn't answer. I waited. He stepped forward. "But if you do, you better hope you've got nothing to hide." This was his way of bluffing, trying to rattle me. He didn't know that I had already sent out a curated report to every single contact in his business circle, including the Real Estate Licensing Board and the IRS tip line. I made sure to drop enough credible evidence that an audit was all but guaranteed. I didn't need him to fall that day. I just needed the dominoes to start falling. And they did. That same morning, Mark, the former business partner who had given me the files, texted me. He called me, yelled at me. "You weren't lying. He's panicking." Good. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was the country. I hadn't told Megan everything, only that I owned it. What I hadn't said was what I was going to build on it. Not a cabin, not a workshop, a massive steel shipping container. You see, the road to this property is narrow, and in an interesting twist of fate, it passes by the back entrance to my dad's old vacation property. This land used to be the pride of the family. He doesn't live there anymore, but he keeps it pristine, partly because he's obsessed with heritage, partly because he still tells people he might develop it into a retreat someday. I had the county records pulled. His driveway was half built on a public easement, half on land he doesn't technically own. That land is mine now. I scheduled the delivery of a 40-foot container. Had it dropped off right on the driveway, right in front of his unused driveway. Bright orange. Could be seen from the highway. A note was taped to the side. "Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted." I got a picture of him standing in front of it from a friend who lives nearby. He was furious, trying to tell a local sheriff's deputy that he owns this land, while the deputy pointed to the property line on a map and said, "No, sir, it belongs to your son." But the part that really shook me, that night, Megan called. She'd gone to Mom's house to confront her about the texts. She expected tears, an apology, maybe a long-winded explanation. What she got was worse. Mom didn't deny it. She told Megan, "Brian has always needed limits. Your father and I knew he'd act out eventually. Act out. As if everything he did to me was discipline. And everything I did to defend myself was rebellion." I listened in silence. Then Megan said something I hadn't expected. I found something in her closet, hidden under a pile of old tax records. It was a letter. Not addressed to anyone, just folded. It was from Dad to you years ago. What did it say? I don't know. I only read the first line before she snatched it away. But the first line was enough. I waited. Megan said it started. I never wanted a son. I didn't say anything. Because now I wasn't just dismantling a man. I was digging up the blueprints of someone else's construction and finding out that I was never meant to be part of the design. Before the letter. Before Megan stood in my kitchen with that sentence burned into her eyes. Before I even knew how deep this was going. There was the container. When it arrived on my land. My land. I wasn't watching from the window. I was out there with the crew. I wanted my boots in the dirt. I wanted to feel it hit the ground. I made sure it was dropped right on the curve of the road that went past the old vacation property. His property. The one he used to take Megan and me to once a year and spend the whole weekend talking about how great his future was going to be and how one day it would all be his legacy. I bolted the shipping container to concrete pads. Bright orange. Massive. And ugly. It didn't belong. And that was the point. I didn't want to block his driveway. I wanted to block his myth. By noon, I was getting calls from local numbers I didn't recognize. I let them go to voicemail. At 2 p.m., Megan sent me a text. He's on his way to you. I didn't move. I stood by the container, leaned against it, and waited. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, his silver sedan pulled up in a fury of gravel and entitlement. He got out, slammed the door, and walked toward me as if I were trespassing on his property. You think this is funny? He said. I didn't answer. You're going to move it. I still didn't answer. You're going to stop whatever this little tantrum is, or I swear. Or what? I said. That stopped him for a second. Then he laughed. The same fake laugh he used at family parties. As if the punchline was always at someone else's expense. Brian, you can't win against me. You want to fight? Fine. But you're going to lose everything. Family, business, name. People will forget you ever mattered. That's when I realized what it really was. He wasn't trying to win. He was trying to wipe me out. And not just now. He'd been doing it in small, quiet ways for years. Little moments. Decisions. Conversation. Where he made sure I was always a footnote. An afterthought in the story he was telling about himself. I don't want to be remembered, I said. I want to be remembered differently. He stepped closer and lowered his voice. You don't know what I can do. I do, I said. That's the difference. He stood there for another moment, breathing as if he were going to punch me. Then he turned and walked back to his car and got out, spraying dirt. The next day, the real chaos began. I got a call from my old high school principal. Yeah, that coincidence. He said someone had called the school claiming to be from a newspaper asking for old disciplinary records on me. Records that didn't exist because I never had any. Then my business email was flooded. Fake customer inquiries. Weird messages. A few threats that felt manufactured. I traced one of the IPs back to a VPN I recognized. A subscription I had once helped my father set up. Then came the last straw. The city zoning office contacted me. Someone had filed a complaint against the container, claimed it was a hazard, said it obstructed a historic easement. The man was actually trying to get the city to cite me for property I owned. I called the city back, sent them everything, proof of ownership, proof that the easement didn't apply, even threw in a few subtle mentions of who I was and why the complaint was retaliatory. The city official chuckled. Sounds like someone doesn't like your new perspective, she said. You're fine. That night, Megan texted me. Can we talk? I found something you need to see. I told her to come over. She brought the letter. The part I hadn't seen yet. The words that would finally shatter what was left of the illusion. The final confirmation that, all this time, all these years, I hadn't just been fighting for acceptance. I'd been fighting to exist in a story that was never written for me. Megan handed me the letter like it was something you didn't just read. You prepared for it. I sat down with it while she paced near the window. I slowly unfolded the pages. Yellowed edges. Ink slightly smudged from age. Or maybe sweaty hands the day it was written. I never wanted a son. No warm-up. No gentle introduction. Just a line. Honest like a knife. It went on. Boys grow up trying to beat you. They don't admire. They replace. Girls stay grateful. They know where the power is and don't pretend it's theirs. The next paragraph was directed at me. Brian used to look at me like he saw through everything I built, like I wasn't real to him, like the house, the job, the reputation. None of it made me enough. I thought he'd grow out of it, but he just got quieter. And then worse, he became successful. He wasn't afraid of losing me. He was afraid of being exposed by me. I wasn't a son to him. I was a mirror, and he hated the reflection. I read on. There was no apology. Not remorse, just bitterness. If he ever tries to confront me, I'll know I was right all along. That he's still just a boy who couldn't accept his father as the final word. I put the letter down and looked at Megan. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. For the first time, I realized that I wasn't angry. I was done. I went to my laptop and opened the folder I named Bridge. It had everything. Screenshots of fake customer lists, the audio file of him slipping up and admitting to hiding income in shell accounts, the message from Mom forwarding one of my business records in case he needed it. But I added one more thing before I sent it. A scan of the letter. I titled the email, "For the Record." I sent it to the entire family, his old work contacts, and the state board. I didn't add any comments. No defense. Just the facts. I wanted them to see him without the charm, without the filter. I hit send and closed the laptop. An hour later, the phone lit up. Jared. What the hell is this? Aunt Lorraine. I always knew there was something wrong with him. Mom? Nothing. Not a word. Dad left the group chat. Blocked my number. But that wasn't the end of it. The next morning, I got a visit. Not from Megan. Not from a lawyer. It was Mark, the guy my dad burned a decade ago. The former partner he'd written out of the company, slandered, and then pretended never existed. He handed me an envelope. State board complaint, he said. I filed it. I used everything you sent me. I wasn't going to, but then I read this letter, and I remembered the way he talked about you when you were a teenager. Like you were a mistake. Inside were notarized forms, witness statements, old financial records Mark had kept out of spite or prudence. It was all there. He's done, he said. He just doesn't know it yet. He turned to leave, but stopped at the door. You know he's going to try something else, right? I nodded. Let him. I visited the property later that day. The container was still there, still blocking the way to his precious retreat. I unlocked the doors. Inside was empty space, cold stale, echoing. But I had a plan for it now. It wouldn't sit there forever. I applied for a permit to build a memorial garden on the land. Not for him, for me, for my peace. A place no one could touch, fenced off, quiet, with just a plaque. Some bridges burned themselves. Let them. 2 weeks later, the audit notice arrived at his address. 3 weeks after that, Megan officially broke up with Mom. She moved into an apartment she paid for herself. She started therapy. I helped her with the security deposit. The SUV? I gave it to a local charity, not out of spite, because I didn't want anything left that reminded me of trying to earn something from someone who never had anything worth giving. As for me, I didn't go public. I didn't drag him through the mud. I didn't need to. Because when you tear down a man's lies, his legacy collapses with them, silently, permanently. And when the dust settles, you realize you never needed their approval. You just had to stop asking for it. Update 1. 2 weeks after everything went out the mail, the evidence, the letter, I thought it would all die down. It didn't. It got quieter, sure, but not in a peaceful way. More like the silence in a room, right after a window breaks. No one's sure if they should look or pretend nothing happened. Megan hadn't heard a word from Mom. Not a question. Not a phone call. Not a denial. Just silence. Which, in its own way, said everything. I'd moved on for the most part. My days were normal again. I went back to work. Clients never heard a whisper of the family drama. My systems held up. No leaks. No fallout. In fact, I got 2 new referrals that week. I had a strange moment sitting in my office, wondering if this was what peace really felt like. Then, I got a letter in the mail, typed, "No return address," but I recognized the formatting. Legal. Inside, a cease and desist from my father. It accused me of slander, libel, and emotional distress. It demanded that I formally retract all distributed materials and communications that defamed the character of Mr. Richardson. I sat there for a minute, not angry, just impressed. The man still thought this was a public relations issue, still thought it was about ego, still thought he could threaten me into backing down. I handed the letter to my lawyer, and she almost laughed. "He doesn't have a case," she said, "and even if he did, the minute he goes to court, this whole letter you found, his voicemails, he'll bury himself." We filed a response. No, I haven't heard from him since. But the real surprise came the following Friday. Megan called. "Check your email," she said. I opened it. It was a scan of a handwritten letter. Not from Dad. From Mom. It started quietly. "Brian, I didn't know what I was doing. I just thought I was protecting our family. I never hated you. I just kept quiet because I thought it was easier." She went on to explain that she never thought Dad would go this far. That when she helped him track down some of my business details, she didn't think it would escalate. That she thought I'd cool off and everything would blow over. Then came the part that didn't make sense. She wrote, "I'm sorry about the letter. I knew about it, but I didn't write it, and neither did your father." I stopped reading. I called Megan. "What do you mean neither of them wrote it?" She was quiet. I talked to Aunt Lorraine. She said she remembered the letter, not because she saw it, but because she heard something a few years ago. Dad told Uncle Jared about a letter I wrote just in case I ever needed it. I felt the pieces start to fall into place. "What kind of letter?" I asked. "A fake one," she said. "He wrote it to make it look old, so that if things ever went wrong with you, he could use it to make you look unstable, like you were the problem all along." He sat staring at my wall. He planted the letter. He wrote it, dated it years ago, hid it, where he knew someone would find it. Someone like Mom, and leak it when it suited him. He knew exactly what that first line would do to me. And it worked. For a moment. It really did work. I sat there for a long time after hanging up. Not because I was shocked anymore. Because I wasn't. Everything suddenly fit. The birthday he forgot. The graduation where he left before my name was called. The business advice that always somehow cost me money. The little digs in front of relatives that everyone laughed off. They weren't accidents. They were maintenance. He had spent years maintaining a version of me that made him feel bigger. And the second I stepped outside that version, he declared war. I looked around my office. Quiet. Organized. Everything in it had been built without him. Without his approval. Without his help. For years, I thought success would make him proud. Instead, it made him afraid. My phone buzzed. A message from Megan. "You okay?" I answered honestly. For the first time in a long time. She replied almost immediately. "I think I am too." That night, I walked out into the driveway. The SUV was gone. The charity had picked it up that afternoon. The empty space where it had been parked somehow felt better than seeing it there every day. No reminder. No symbol. No unfinished conversation. Just space. A few days later, my lawyer called. The state board officially opened its investigation. I thanked her. She asked if I wanted updates. "Only if they matter," I said, because somehow they didn't anymore. The outcome wasn't going to change my life. The decision already had. Over the next month, relatives slowly started reaching out. Some apologized. Some pretended nothing had happened. A few wanted to explain why they had stayed silent. I listened when I felt like listening. I didn't when I didn't. For the first time, I realized I didn't owe anyone access to me simply because we shared a last name. Megan came over every Sunday after that. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we just had coffee. Neither of us mentioned Dad unless there was something new to say. There usually wasn't. Eventually, she asked me one question. If he called tomorrow and apologized, would it change anything? I thought about it, longer than I expected. Then I shook my head. No, Because you don't forgive him? No, I said. Because I already accepted that he's never going to become the father I kept waiting for. She nodded. There wasn't anything else to add. Some losses aren't sudden. Some happen one disappointment at a time, until one day you finally admit they've already happened. That was mine. I wasn't grieving a relationship. I was grieving the hope that one day there might have been one. Oddly enough, once that hope disappeared, so did the wait. Life became simpler. Work expanded. I hired 2 new employees before the end of the year. The memorial garden permit was approved. Construction started that spring. When I stood on that piece of land again, I looked toward the old vacation property. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't even feel satisfaction. I just felt distance, the kind that finally lets a wound become a scar. Megan stood beside me the day we placed the small stone plaque near the entrance. She read the inscription out loud. Some bridges burned themselves. Let them. Neither of us spoke for a while after that. We didn't need to. Sometimes closure doesn't arrive as a dramatic confrontation. Sometimes it's just realizing that the person who spent years trying to define your worth no longer gets a vote. And once you understand that, you stop looking back